I am so thrilled today to be interviewing Jane Hogan. Now, Jane has an amazing story about living pain-free after a horrible pain-related diagnosis. And since she's gone through this journey, she has begun a career of helping others deal with chronic pain. And she does this by using a combination of science-backed strategies, but also by incorporating mindset. So she is the wellness engineer, and this makes sense because she used to be a civil engineer turned functional medicine health coach. She is an absolute delight, and I have no doubt that you will walk away with some very awesome pearls today. And if you have been dealing with chronic pain or you've been dealing with an autoimmunity diagnosis and people have told you that you've exhausted your options or you've tried everything and it just isn't getting better, this interview is absolutely for you. Such a pleasure to introduce Jane Hogan. Hi, Jane Hogan.
Hi, Tricia Pingel. So nice to see you today.
So lovely to have you. You're sitting freezing and I'm sitting here in a tank top. Will you tell everyone where you're from and how freaking cold it is today?
I'm in Newfoundland, Canada, and it's wintertime. It's in in Fahrenheit, it's about -5. It's cold with the wind chill,
So I was complaining yesterday because when I got up, my feet were cold when I walked barefoot from my guest house into my house because it was like 5. I know. I was complaining. So here's one of the things to be grateful for. I have sunshine with heat, I guess. But you are like the queen of cold plunge. So I'm sure you're taking full advantage of this, right?
Well, I got a plunge this week because my goal has been to plunge on the full moon. And so that's this week. So I'm kind of hoping it warms up a little.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, I am thrilled to have you here because I think I can only imagine the stories you must have from your transformation. But the reason I wanted to have this conversation with you is so many people are dealing with chronic pain, chronic diagnoses, and they're going to the doctor. And the doctor's like, well, here's your Band-Aid, or there's nothing we can do, or here's another MRI, or here's another referral, or here's another medication. It may not work. It may. Here's your side effect. And what I have seen happen with this, and yours is autoimmunity, and I'm going to let you tell this story because I know many of my audience out there, I know you guys have autoimmunity. And we've talked about it a lot because we talk about how stress impacts the immune system and autoimmunity. But especially in the autoimmune world, what I find is people get a diagnosis and they're told, you have a diagnosis, that's it. You're going to be deformed, you're going to be tired, you're going to have problems. Here's the medication. Oh, by the way, here's all the side effects. Your life cannot be as full as it could have been because of this diagnosis. And people grab that label and they grab onto it and they say, well, I can't do that because I have an immune disorder. Well, I can't do that because I have an autoimmune disease. Well, yeah, you can do that, but I can't because I have this or that. And so I want to break this down because not only have you completely changed your life and are literally plunging in practically the Arctic, and outdoing your type of thing, but you have actually turned this into a career as well, from being someone who's very in your head, a civil engineer, somebody who's very, I'm going to fix it type person, into somebody that really had to lead from here. And now you've turned that into a career. So I'm first of all, gosh, I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for you going through this and then sharing it with people. And I'm grateful to be the one to be able to chat with you about this because I so wholeheartedly believe that we have so much more control over our health from here. And before I turn it over, just a little point. I've spent 15 years, 20 years, talking to people about stress and working on the physical impact of stress, right? The internal environment of stress, nutritional deficiencies, hormone balances, thyroid disorders, immune system, microbiome, all these types of things, which of course is important. But still, to this day, my most successful people are the people that deal with the mindset. Because once they deal with the mindset, all the other things start to level out. The treatments happen so much faster, and the depression goes away because you get so caught up in chasing, trying to get better all the time, right?
Mhm.
So can we just start? Tell us your story. Tell us, I don't even know what, we're just going to figure out what to ask you as we go, because
Okay.
I'm going to let you start, because this is so fascinating to me, this journey from civil engineer to patient to healer.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know this was going to happen. I was just having a normal life like everyone else. I was working as a civil engineer. And then I had this big stress in my life when I lost my mother suddenly. I was talking to her and then she was gone. And I'd already lost my father years before. And I also had to deal with, I mean, aside from the grief, she was my best friend and my champion, and I missed her terribly. And then I also had her house to deal with. I was the executor of her estate. I had two older siblings, one younger sibling. My parents were travelers and collectors. The house was full of stuff.
Yeah.
And I had to deal with it. And it was also not close to me, a 7 hour drive away. And so in this year, I had a lot of stress and I was hardly sleeping. And if anyone's ever dealt with siblings and you're dealing with an estate, there's always a lot of stress with that, right? So it brought up a lot, of course, because there's a lot of childhood stuff that goes with your siblings. And so a year after my mother died, when I was just kind of coming to the final end of getting the house cleared out, getting the house on the market and all that, I started developing this severe joint pain. Now, I hadn't been sleeping for months. I really was not sleeping well. I was incredibly stressed and sad and had a lot of tension going on. And so it started like really randomly, one shoulder one day and the other shoulder the next day. It just moved all around my body. I didn't know what it was, but I figured it was stress. I mean, I knew I just gone through this stressful year, so I figured it was stress, but nothing was showing up in my blood work. And then I was working with my family doctor, of course, and I'm really, really lucky. Like, she was fabulous. She's a lot like you, actually. She said she didn't like just prescribe something right away. She said, we'll wait to get you into a rheumatologist. Now, in Newfoundland, this takes months, so it was going to be months before I would see a rheumatologist. But she said sometimes foods can cause joint pain, and this was 2016. I had no idea about this. And she said gluten and dairy and sugar were kind of the common ones. So I went away from that. Actually, I forgot to say something first.
Yeah.
And this was even before my doctor told this, about a few days before. I was like, I thought I just need to take some time off work and rest. So I did that. And I thought, okay, I'll be better then. The house is sold. Everything's taken care of. I'll just rest and I'll get back to normal. But I got worse. And I was lying in bed one morning. My husband had gone to work and I was all alone because we had an empty nest at this point. And I was just at this rock bottom moment. And I remember thinking, if this is how my life is going to turn out, I'm just ready to be done. I'm ready to stop. I wasn't really like suicidal, but I was certainly having thoughts like that. And then in the next moment, Tricia, I know it sounds crazy, but I heard a voice in my head, but it wasn't my voice. And it said, this is not how your life is going to turn out. You're going to figure it out and you're going to teach other people. So that was kind of the key thing, right?
I love that.
I know.
How often do people ignore that, though? Like, do you know what I mean?
I
I just
know.
ask the audience as you keep starting, like, think about, have you ever heard that in your head? And then you were like, what? Like, oh my gosh, that's powerful. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
I
so back to it. So you go to talk about foods. Okay.
Yeah, so I was like, I was still in pain right after I heard this, but I had like an inner knowing that could not be shaken that I would figure it out. So I was like, I'm still in pain, but I know I'm going to figure this out because the voice told me. And so went to see my doctor a few days later, and she told me about this gluten, dairy, and sugar. So I was like, oh, okay, this is it. This is how I'm figuring it out. So I cut out gluten, dairy, and sugar. Now, I had no anti-inflammatory diet to follow. I had no idea what I was doing. I just stopped eating those foods. And within 5 days, you probably know this, I had like a noticeable reduction in pain in 5 days. We know now, the gut lining started to repair itself and all that. So I thought, okay, food is the answer. Food is medicine. And so I started down this whole road of food. And all I got to do is eat the right foods and I'll get better. And so I was doing this for a while, and I did get better but I still had pain. I still had inflammation, so it wasn't 100%. And started going down a little bit further, discovered functional medicine, started working with a functional medicine practitioner, had SIBO, took a few months to get that sorted out, 8 months to get that cleared up. And I thought, okay, now I'm going to be better. But I still wasn't like, I was a lot better, but not 100%. And so then I really started working a lot more with my mind and emotions, and that changed everything.
It's unbelievable. It's such a common story of, well, when I just get this figured out, I'll be better. Oh, well,
Yeah.
I'm just going to do this and then I'll be better. You're already better, right? When you look at some of the work of like Dr. Joe Dispenza, and we say we're already our future selves, we're already better.
Yeah.
Time just hasn't caught up yet. And
Mm-hmm.
when you start to just get into that moment rather than always seeking the answer. Now, with that said, of course, it helped to help with the, to help with the food, the SIBO, the imbalances. And these are the things that I think what I'm finding, like I said in the beginning, like there's two people that come in, or there's three. There's one person that doesn't do any of it, right? And they don't get any better. But then you have the people that come in, they do everything. They do it all. They do the food, they do the supplements, they do the exercise,
Yeah.
they do everything. They research it and they go over and over and over again.
That was me.
But I know we should dive into perfectionism. So, but they do all of it, but they can only get maybe 80% better. And then they're like, see, I'm never going to be any better. Like I can't, there has to be an answer. And the answer sometimes then at that point is to let go, to surrender. And I always say like, how great would it feel if you could just let go of 80% of the crap that runs through your head every day? What if you just said, I don't need it. How much energy, focused energy, could you really put into healing at that point? I mean, as a woman, and I'm sure you're the same way, maybe not anymore, but like how much runs through your head every single day? Right?
Oh, a lot, especially
Yeah.
when my kids were younger.
Yeah. So you and I have a lot in common because there was something I read on your website, which was just beautiful. So I'm actually going to read it because it was so beautiful. And it was, I realized how a lifetime of perfectionism and people pleasing had impacted my health physically and emotionally. Right? I am also a recovered perfectionist, right? I was a fashion model. That's all we were taught to be was perfect
Yeah.
all the time. And
Talk
it
about
wasn't
pressure.
until pressure and perfection and this drive that we have as people to be better, which is wonderful. But what if our future is already done and planned and it's already wonderful and amazing and good health and what if we're just not cognizant of it? We're almost derailing it because we're trying to control it so much. So what was when you started to really hone in on the mindset? How did you start? And how did you get a hold of that perfectionist brain to be able to do it?
Oh my goodness. I don't know if it wasn't one thing, right? It was a lot of different things. But I had been using visualization. I don't know, you mentioned like Joe Dispenza. I had been picturing myself. I didn't know about Joe Dispenza then actually, but I had done a lot of studying in personal development. So I knew about the power of visualization. So I would visualize myself well and, climbing this mountain. There's a second highest peak in Newfoundland called Gross Moor. And it's like a 7-hour hike and climb. And at the time, I could barely walk, but I would picture myself climbing this and putting my arms up. And I would also had that Miley Cyrus song, The Climb. So I had that song in my head. So I was doing some of this stuff, but I realized that, I think it was through reading a lot of different things because I'm a, researcher, studier, and reading books like Gabor Mate, when the body says no, and some others. But in that one, there was, specifically with rheumatoid arthritis, that there was, because that was a diagnosis I had. I don't know if I mentioned that, but eventually diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. There's a lot of people pleasing, perfectionism, hypervigilance, hyperindependence as part of that. So then I started looking and going, yeah, I mean, I knew. I like things to be perfect and always like doing everything myself. I was president of the swim club for my kids, the president of the chess club. I ran everything, did it so well. Even dealing with my mother's estate, did that perfectly and most fairly and everything, So I had always put a lot of pressure on myself. But I realized, I had to look back at kind of where it came from. Also learned about the ACEs scores, right? Adverse childhood event scores, and how people with a high score have higher risk of health conditions, especially autoimmune, as they're older. Not that I had a traumatic childhood. Like I didn't have major trauma, but I did have some minor trauma, and I think it kind of came up as I was dealing with my mother's estate, kind of like something that I thought was hidden and should be over that,
Yeah.
it came up again. And so I realized, gosh, surrender, part of surrender is forgiveness, right? I had to do some forgiveness and let really, like a lot of people in my life, going back, the ones, the ones that bother you, because you'll think about them and you get a little like niggle, irritation, whatever. It's not just neutral. So anything that you think about and you're not neutral, those are the areas you need to do some forgiveness, that surrender, letting go. But I also had to surrender the behavior of perfectionism and stop trying to be perfect. And also, like, even perfect health, what does that mean? Stop striving for perfection in health. It didn't matter if a couple of my knuckles were swollen or whatever. Just, it's okay. I'm still fine, right? So long journey, really.
On the concept of perfectionism, when you really think about it, what is the definition of perfect? There's
What is
none.
the definition of perfect?
There's none. Like it's all individualized. So
Not
like,
achievable.
we're reaching for something that's not achievable, right? Because what might be perfect to you is not perfect to somebody else. I mean, some people would look at us with like my house is very well organized, right? I like my forks straight, like in the drawer. I like to have them in the right spot, Now I don't flip out if they don't, because I have teenage boys. So I've learned to let that go. I'm just happy and very grateful that they took it out of the dishwasher and got it in the right drawer. Like, thank heavens. But I like things in order. I feel calmer when things are in order. Well, I have other friends of mine who are not like that, right? And they would think my definition of perfect is insane. Like, perfect would be less than that, So we put these definitions of perfection on ourselves, and then we put this pressure to reach that, but we'll never reach it. Because it's nothing. It doesn't mean anything. I think I try to achieve an imperfect perfect. I want to be imperfectly perfect, meaning I'm just imperfect, and that's what's perfect about me. The weird little things, right? So I bet that you discovered about yourself when you started to let go of that perfectionism, how beautifully perfect you already were, right? Just you.
Yes.
I mean, your soul just shines through,
It's true, that you can see yourself differently. And I think, going alongside with the perfectionism is that people pleasing, because, we got to be perfect for other people, right? I became an engineer because that's what my father wanted me to do. And, it was okay. I was happy with it. I was good at it. I liked it. But when I started reevaluating everything, I was like, well, who do I want to be? What do I want to do? Because I'm done with trying to please other people. That hasn't worked for me.
Yep.
So, it's just like, okay. And I realized that, well, first of all, the voice told me I was going to teach people how to get out of pain, but also I wasn't going to wait anymore. I didn't want to do that job I was doing anymore, because I had a deeper passion and a purpose now. And that's what I wanted to do. And that's what I wanted. And actually, I feel like I'm here to do. I feel like almost everything happened for a reason, really. My life is better because of RA and because of the pain that I experienced. So, yeah, so letting all that go.
Yeah, such a powerful lesson, because when we're in it, like when I was 24 when I lost my uncle when I was 10, my dad when I was 24, I had a third grandparent family. So I called them my grandparents. I had 3 sets of grandparents, a set of grandparents that were very close to me. One of them, right after I had my first child, my mom was diagnosed with cancer, lost her when I was 40, lost the other grandfather during COVID, and then I had 2 other grandmothers that I lost. And not to mention just grief in general. From when you lose the people around you, you somewhat lose your identity, right? Because you're like, wait, I'm attached to this person. These are the patterns that I grew up being this person's daughter. Like, who am I without this person? Who am I, right? Especially with my mom, which was similar to yours, very close, very, very close. Who am I without this person? And we start to go through all these patterns of grief. and through all this loss. And we start to feel that and we allow it to bring us down and say, we can't do this because of this. I've had too much pain to move forward. And it isn't until later, it isn't until you've come through it on the other side and you look back, which is what you do and what I do at this point, is I look back and go, oh my gosh, if my dad wouldn't have died in that moment, I wouldn't have become a doctor. Mm-hmm. If my grandmother wouldn't have gone through dementia and I walked her through that and looked at the importance of brain health and nutrition and cardiovascular health and stress, right? My mom also had a ton of stress and she had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a toxin-based cancer. All these things that happened to me brought me to where I am. I would have never come on to something like this, gone onto a podcast, gone onto Instagram, talked about stress, brought my lessons to the world without those events. Ever. Who knows what I could have gone off to Japan when I was 13 and modeled. I could be dead. I don't know. So I think when we're in it, and I think the lesson for those of you listening that are in pain, that are in loss, that are feeling hopeless, and it's hard when somebody comes to you and says, oh, this is for a reason, or this is happening for a reason. It's hard to hear that in the moment.
It is. Yeah, it's just so like I could do without that.
Yeah, you're like, oh yeah, whatever, lady, But I think it is really important because just some small little mindset shifts. Like do you have a rubber band on your arm?
It's right here. Same one you have. Yep.
Yeah, right. We both have this great habit. Look at this. Show our rubber bands. See? We're wearing rubber bands. So when I catch myself in a mindset that is blame or fear or excuses or limitations of any sort, it's okay. I state it. I catch myself and I go, darn it. And I take a deep breath and I restate it in a way that is doesn't always have to be positive, just something that's a higher frequency. You can't live in a fake positive, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when you feel like crap, you feel like crap. It's okay to acknowledge that. But there is a way to start changing your language in the way that you look at it, saying, oh, it's going to be like this forever. This is just going to get worse. I'm never going to get better. Why can't someone find the solution? All these things we say to ourselves when really just saying, I have this solution in me. Take a breath, listen to your body, and really connect with that. And I think that's one of the biggest limitations that people have when they're in pain, such as you did, is trying to get that shift and realizing how small it is. Were there just do you have a couple small tips for people to take every single day that's easy and quick that they just start with to start to get outside of this mindset?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, well, I believe, and I know you're there as well, calming the nervous system is kind of the most important thing we have to do. And the only person that can do it is you. And it's also really an all the time thing, but it's hard to be like aware 100% of the time. So that awareness is really key. That's why you and I have those bracelets, right? It's like reminding us. But you can start off your day with little shifts. So starting off the day with like picturing, I talked about how I was picturing climbing that mountain, right? And arms up in the air and my song. So spending a little bit of time, especially in the morning, and well, I say 3 times a day at least, but especially in the morning, especially before you go to sleep at night, visualizing yourself well and just really like closing your eyes, getting that picture really clear, pulling in all your senses, tying it all together. That's a really powerful exercise, and we can run through one if you want. And also what I found super helpful in what I use a lot is affirmations.
Yeah.
Because one of the ways, now, I mean, it's not just like blah, 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 saying the affirmations. It's like saying them and feeling them. And because one of the ways we've got, like most of the time we're running on subconscious programs, right? And the subconscious programs, the way we can get to our subconscious mind is through repetition. So one way is with affirmations, right? Mm-hmm. So I didn't realize I was doing this in the beginning. I was sort of I was imagining my mother's voice saying, I'm so proud of you. You're going to figure this out. You're doing so well. Every day you're getting better and better. And it was my mother's voice. And then after a while, I realized it was my voice. And so I love using affirmations like I am finding new ways to help my body every day. I'm finding ways to finding more joy in life every day. Excuse me. So yeah, just doing these different affirmations. I know there's something for you to, your guests can download, or I've got some affirmations for them so they can get a sample of what these are like. And if you listen to them enough, you ever notice, like, if I'm in a choir, and so when we're practicing these songs in a choir, then the songs are in your head and you're kind of hearing them all the time, even when you're not even trying to hear them, right? Trying to practice them. Affirmations are like that too. You say them enough, then they're just kind of playing in your mind in the background. We can reprogram the subconscious mind. So I love affirmations. So those are a couple of really powerful tools.
Yeah, that it's like I always say, it's so funny. I can remember every single lyric from songs in my childhood and through college, but half the time I can't remember where my shoes are, right? It's like I could sit there and I can rap Shoop by Salt and Peppa and get every single word out beautifully, right? And so it's the repetition, it's the singing, and there is science to singing.
Yes.
Why do we teach toddlers the ABCs with a song?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of, we write them, we hear them, we
Yep.
sing them, we speak them. So any parents out there, think about how you would train a toddler, right? You train them to wind down before sleep. You give them a warm bath. You read them a story, right? We teach them to remember things by song and
Mm-hmm.
repetition. So when we were little, we had the same thing, but we had the repetitions could have been a habit that maybe gave us some sort of limiting belief or some sort of block. And it's just the way it is. The parents didn't do a bad job. I'm sure my kids have all sorts of blocks, right? They're going to have to figure it out, right? We're just going to have to work on it together. But it's the same thing. You have to get into your subconscious. And you were saying it's not just about saying the words. And I think that's a very important point. You have to feel it.
Yeah.
So people say, I hear this all the time. I try to meditate. I try affirmations. It doesn't work. I say it every day and it doesn't work. And I'm like, were you just saying it? Or are you feeling it? Are you truly feeling it? And one of the ways that I found to make it a little bit more solid in the beginning is to put my hands over my heart, take
Mm-hmm.
breaths. I tend to do the inhale for 4 through the nose, hold 4, out through the mouth 4, hold 4, in through the nose, and do that a few times. And if you close your eyes and your hands are over the heart, typically you'll start to see colors.
Mm-hmm.
So I usually don't start any affirmations until I see colors, because when I don't start to see
I like
colors, I
that.
know I'm not in the right headspace. I'm still in my, headspace. So, but the science and the healing comes from that connection between saying it and having the emotion of it. And one of the, I guess, taglines for my movement or my mission is feel your music, find your joy. And the reason that resonates with me is that we do feel music, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're sad and you put on a sad song, you sing it, right? When you're angry, you sing it. When you want to have fun, you sing it, you dance. We actually feel music, and we need to start doing that with our emotions and our thoughts as well. And it's really sometimes that simple, is just singing it, singing your
Yeah.
affirmation.
Yeah, I love that. Singing them is a great idea. And you reminded me, talking about the power of music, like with the visualization, having a song.
Yeah.
That one of the reasons why I love having a song with it is because music evokes powerful emotions. I mean, we know that. Imagine watching a movie with no soundtrack.
Oh, I know.
It wouldn't work, right? Because they know that they want to create an emotion in us. So they use the music is one way they do that. So it's really, really powerful. You got me thinking now, how can I put all my affirmations to sing them and put them to music?
I was watching, do you remember the show Ally McBeal from the
Yeah.
90s?
Yeah, I love that
So,
show.
oh my God, I love that show, right? So I watched the whole thing in the 90s, and I've actually been searching for it somewhat recently on Hulu and Netflix, because I'm like, they have to re-air it, right? Like, it was great. Well, it shows up on Hulu. About 3 weeks ago, I go into Hulu and I'm like, Ally McBeal. So I was like, okay, because sometimes for myself, sometimes I'll just take a half an hour and I'll watch a show once a day and I'll just kind of laugh and get it out or whatever. So there was an episode I listened to a couple weeks ago, and she's in the therapist's office, and the therapist is like, you need a theme song so that when you walk down the street, you hear it, right? She picks Tell Him, like, tell him that you're always going to love him. Tell him that you're.
Yeah.
So she's kind of standing on the street and she's kind of bopping around, right? And then everyone starts bopping with her, and I was like, my gosh, if we could all just pick a theme song, like a song in our head that just makes us feel good, that you can pull up in a moment's notice in your head. You don't even need to play it, but you could if you need to. I wonder how much happier we'd be. Like, there's something very powerful about that because it taps into your subconscious of emotions that you don't know. So the audience doesn't know this, you know this, but before we started this interview, I've been sick. I've had a sore voice, and I was kind of like, not down, but kind of like, wish I had more voice today, right? And then I was like catching myself with my little rubber band saying, no, I'm grateful to be here. And I'm listening to music, and all of a sudden Piano Man by Billy Joel comes on. And this was my dad's and my song. So I can't play Piano Man well, just to be clear, but I would pluck along a little bit on the piano, and he would play the guitar and the harmonica, and we would sing it together. This was our song. And it comes on, and all of a sudden I get this rush of love.
So beautiful.
Love and compassion and laughter. And I start swaying to the music. And I mean, you didn't see me swaying so much, but I'm up dancing around my office. I'm like, oh, I've got a minute. She's not going to be here for a minute. I'm just going to dance, right? How fast can a piece of music just change your mood, right? And your outlook, So I'd really like us to use it more.
I've heard somewhere, I don't know if it's true, but whistling, I've heard someone say you can't feel down and whistle at the same time. Maybe, same kind of thing, right?
Let's try it. I don't know the answer to this. Do you still have positive markers for rheumatoid arthritis?
I haven't had my blood checked in a while. To me, it doesn't matter, really.
No, it doesn't. I'm just curious because people are like, well, once you have rheumatoid, you always have rheumatoid. I don't believe that because actually, many may not know this, but when you diagnose an autoimmunity, you have to have so many symptoms. Like you could have a marker, you could have a positive ANA and a positive dsDNA for lupus in your blood, but that's only 2 out of the 8 you have to have, right? So you have to have, certain symptoms for certain lengths of time. So your diagnosis of rheumatoid can actually be reversed regardless of whether or not you still have the markers.
Exactly.
But a lot of people think that if you have the marker, that's it. You have it forever. I have the markers for celiac, and I don't have celiac disease.
Yeah, I think I just kind of go by how I'm feeling. Now, I'm not the person that I was before RA. I still have to watch. If I start putting pressure on myself, then I may get some pain. I go, okay, I know what this is. I know what this is. I know I'm putting pressure on myself somehow. Right. And so I have to work through that. So, but it's almost like my body's like a barometer. Oh, all right. Now I see what you're doing. Let's take some time to chill and relax and take care of things, take care of yourself. So, but I haven't, like where I live, they wouldn't bother doing that test again because, it's, our medical system, they're not going to test for that again. Doesn't matter to them. Right. So
once you have it, you always have it. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But one that I do get tested is the C-reactive protein, high sensitivity C-reactive protein. So I can see that like I'm, well on the bottom end of normal. Well, we all know what that normal thing doesn't really make sense anyway. But yeah, so I know that those markers are fine. But, that's just a little bit of extra information. I just go more by how am I feeling? How am I feeling? Am I living my life and having fun? That's the main thing.
Yeah. So you had mentioned earlier about the ACEs score, right? And how you can score trauma in childhood. And I think the word trauma tends to get misunderstood, kind of like the word stress. Like, what does stress mean, right? What does trauma mean? I think when we say we have trauma in our childhood, we think that it has to be this massive thing, right? Or that there has to be some massive event for there to be stress, when in reality, the statistics say, first of all, that 80% of people who are diagnosed with an autoimmune disease say that it came after a stressful event. Yeah. I would say it's accumulation over time. And then there happens to be one event that happens. It's like the icing on the cake. It's like your cup is full and it spills over. Yep. So when we say the word trauma, I think people misunderstand that. Like when I look back, some of the quote trauma was more just me trying to express myself, or maybe being told that I shouldn't do that, or you're too pretty for that, or that's not how we do it. Or it wasn't like trauma, but in a mind, it puts a block. So I kind of think of trauma as, where was I blocked? Where was I limited?
Yeah.
Where did I learn the, not wrong, but where did I learn this behavior or this habit that shaped me into what I am? So I thought that was a really good point when you talked about the ACEs score. And I don't know, can you talk more about that? Because I imagine that people out there may want to understand more what this means and what trauma means when it comes to healing autoimmunity or any pain condition, really.
When I forget what year this first came out, the ACEs score, but it looked at like what we kind of classically think of as trauma, the major trauma events, different forms of abuse and neglect, having alcoholic or drug using parents, someone from your family in jail, those kinds of things. And so with that score, basically they correlated between that high score, that and high incidence of health issues later on. But I think there's been a lot more research since then, knowing that, well, it doesn't have to be one of those events. And actually people could have one of those events, but how they responded to it would be different depending on the supports that they had. If they'd had some kind of abuse, say not someone in their immediate family but extended family, but their immediate family was very supportive and loving, then it wouldn't have had the same kind of impact. So there's so many kinds of factors. So there's a lot more going on with that now. We know that pretty much everyone has had some form of trauma. There's
Everybody.
we haven't escaped it. We don't escape it. And it just kind of means, to me, it means we assigned meaning to that, and then we created a belief about ourselves from that, right? And so that belief is what's stored in that subconscious mind. But then we end up having the behaviors that Gabor Mate talked about, the behaviors where they're adaptive behavior. So we adapted to this situation because we're little and we can't fight and we can't flee. We have to adapt, right? And so how do we adapt? We become the people pleaser. We become the perfectionist. We become hyper vigilant, just making sure everything okay because I don't know. We become hyper independent because we've learned that, well, I can't depend on other people, so I'm going to have to depend on myself. So, it's those kinds of things that we create these adaptations. We think through our personality, but they're not. They're adaptations we created in response to these adverse situations when we were kids, which we all go through.
Yeah, I mean, the name of this show is What Are You Modeling? And we build these model behaviors. These behaviors, we're modeling for somebody else what we've been modeled and what we've been modeled. And
I love that title, by the way. I think it's so good because we do learn. We're little sponges, right? Before the age of 7. So it's just like, okay, we learned that. That's what the way life is. All right. We just form those beliefs, right? And then we model
that's
them.
my role in the world, right? Yeah, you're told what your role is in the world and what you're going to be.
Yep.
Often from the time, like, you were going to be a civil engineer because your dad was a civil engineer. My mom was a working, beautiful, stunning model, right? So I was born, plopped right in front of the camera. Well, guess what this one's going to be? She's cute. Let's throw her in front of there, right?
Yeah.
And now, great experience. I actually learned a lot in that industry about how to overcome perfectionism and not care so much about people think. I'm so grateful that I was given those opportunities in all those years. But I did learn of modeling what I thought other people wanted, right? Because you people please. So I think it's really important. So as we wrap up here, I would love it if you would speak directly to those listening that have chronic pain, autoimmune diagnosis. They're doing all the things. They're trying everything to get better. They want more than anything to get better. They feel like they're losing themselves in their life. Mm-hmm. I want to hear your advice for them.
I see so many people like that, Tricia, that have been trying so hard and they've been doing all the things. They've been going to the naturopath or whoever, taking the supplements, doing the tests, doing all the things. And, they're still in pain and they don't understand why. I think there's a lot of neuroscience now around pain. And one thing we know is that when we keep focusing on the pain so much and really working hard and also like, why isn't it working? we're actually creating more pain. It's not physically. I mean, we're feeling it physically, but the brain starts to create more pain. It's wiring neural networks for pain. And so maybe we just take that pressure off and just kind of like go, ah, I'm fine. I'm fine for today. What can I do that's going to be fun for me today? And yeah, you might be in pain, but see if you can just find a little distraction. Find some little distractions, find some joy, and just go, instead of saying, I'm not, it's kind of perfectionism, right? I am not healed until I am perfect.
Yeah.
Right? Instead, like, I'm fine. Like, in this moment today, we want to send messages of safety to our brain. So we want, because of course, if we're thinking I'm in pain, it's not good enough, and what's my life going to be like? We're creating more fear.
Mm-hmm.
And so that fear starts wiring more networks for pain, because pain is protection and our brain just keeps trying to protect us, right? So it turns on more pain. So as hard as it is, and I understand where people are coming from, and I understand that it's hard to not think about pain when you're in pain, but as hard as it is, if we want to get out, we can't be thinking about it all the time, right? We have to give ourselves some moments of feeling like I'm fine as I am. I'm fine as I am. Or what can I find that's fun for me today or joyful for me today? So we want to give our brain those experiences of, I'm in pain, but I'm fine. I am actually living a great life here, right? So
Alive, right? Like it's another day to make an impact on somebody else
yeah,
in the world. That's something to be grateful for too. Like maybe you
yeah.
have a child and you can make their day and you were alive to do that. Like
Mhm.
those little gratitudes, right, Jane?
Oh my gosh, and gratitude is just such a great way to shift your nervous system back to,
Mhm.
all is well, all is good, and then that's the only place where their body can heal. It's got to be in that state in order to heal. So the only one that can shift us there is ourselves. So I hope that helps people feel empowered, because that's my message, that's your message, right? We want people to feel empowered. You are the one that can do this, and you can do it. It's just a thought, and thoughts can be changed.
I love it. I love it. And you are giving everyone a gift today. So I'm going to
Yep.
put it in the show notes. Do you want to tell people what it is?
Yep. It's I call it an audio bundle for helping your body release pain. So there's a breath work practice for releasing pain.
Awesome.
And it's a heart focused one. It's just beautiful. And there's a guided meditation, and then there's the affirmations. I did 108 affirmations for releasing pain and creating peace in your body.
Oh, I love that. And where can they find you, beautiful thing?
Oh, you're so sweet. Well, my website is thewellnessengineer.com. I have a podcast called Wellness by Design, and I'm on social media, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, at Jane Hogan Health. The Wellness Engineer was already taken, so.
Well, that's awesome. Well, I could be with you all day. Obviously, I need to let you go so you can heal people today as well and help people, guide people. But I just want to thank you and give you so much gratitude for just being here and talking about your journey. And my only hope is that someone listening today realized how much power they have over their health and over their future. And every day is a gift.
Mm-hmm.
Every moment we have interacting with somebody else, petting our dog, making food, those are all things to be grateful for, right? We have the ability to do so much, and we tend to focus on the things we don't have versus the things we have. So walk away today and focus on the things that you have. And the fact that you listened to this interview was you taking time for you, which gives me so much gratitude. So I'm grateful so much for you, Jane. I'm grateful for all of you listening. Thank you so much for being here. Have a
Thank
great
you, Tricia. I love what you're doing.
Thank you.